Hello, beloved community. This is Lori Hanau.
And Jodi Clark. Hello.
And what's up for us in shared leadership, what we're really working with right now is anger and overwhelm through the lens of shared leadership. And how, I'm walking into a lot of places where we're doing our trainings.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, whether it's for political reasons, environmental reasons, just the kind of day-to-day quickening and speed and overwhelm that people seem to feel more and more consistently, no matter where they are in the hierarchy within the workplace. Just so many ways that I'm walking in and experiencing high levels of upset and overwhelm. And so this is so up right now that we thought that this may be a good topic for us to be sharing about and talking through ourselves and seeing if anybody listening to this right now in the community has any questions or any stories that you want to share. But the question that's really up for me, Jodi, is how when I mention overwhelm and shared leadership to you and anger, what are your questions? What comes to mind for you through a shared leadership framework?
So what comes up for me is, what are the ways that in shared leadership we have built in how to notice, how to take a step back? What are our agreements around, like, hey, stop the presses, everybody. We're in this place, and let's realign. What's that? What's our signal? And then where do we go from there? Like, what are some of the things that we can do together to that without it being overly urgent to create more stress, but to really take the time that it's needed to go, we're in this place right now. Let's honor this place. And then how do we move through this place?
And then what are you seeing when you say we're in this place? Who are you seeing in your imagination right now?
So I'm seeing a team that's working together. Let's give the example of a team meeting. And we're in this team meeting and we have this agenda, and the agenda was created very beautifully in shared leadership. But what's coming up in the moment, we're rushing through it. And maybe one person's getting a little snippy about a particular piece and may not be realizing it. And no one's said anything yet. So somebody has noticed, whoa, hang on a second. We're in this place. So working through that moment, and then with also knowing that this team meeting is a really important meeting. We've got this agenda that there's a bunch of things that need to happen that may cause more stress if we don't get through them. How to navigate that moment of, well, we're having a moment of stress that's being expressed through us, and then there's also the potential for more stress if we don't get through our agenda. What are the ways we work through that?
So that's really interesting, because that brings up different kinds of stress. Like if somebody's noticing the group is rushing, or if somebody is feeling stressed themselves, and then they want to pause for a moment, and that creates stress in some other person in the group, and so that the stress is leading.
Yeah.
And so, I want to remind us that shared leadership, to what end, right? So what shared leadership means for global roundtable leadership is that it's a new way of working together, where we are leading with our humanity, we're leading relationally, right? We're honoring the collective wisdom, and that it's also about compassion. How are we cultivating empathy and mindfulness, emotional intelligence, compassion, kindness, humor,
Mm-hmm.
what are these elements that support our nourishment and our more humane ways of being together? And so in that kind of an interaction, naming, right? So being brave, because all of this, I've really been thinking about this as like risky business, that I know as much as we are setting our workplaces to want to be safe environments, what does it mean to take a risk?
Right.
And that this is risky business that we're inviting people into too. And even if you didn't name if you weren't the one that built the agenda, if you're not one of the execs in the meeting, and you're noticing, that we've gone into an unhealthy way of working together in this meeting, how are we brave enough to ask everybody to pause for a moment and do a check-in? And maybe that pause is, okay, we need a little humor here. Like we did, right? Because it brings up an automatic giggle.
Yeah, totally,
typically, and shifts the energy immediately.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It could be, we need to take a breath and just take a pause and remember the purpose and the goals of why we're here. If that's a part of what we've strayed away from.
Yeah.
And it could be even acknowledging, like, I find over and over that naming the dynamics out loud. So even if I'm the one pausing a meeting and saying, I realize that pausing this meeting, may be stressful for in this moment for somebody else, and that's not my goal or aim. And so I'm going to ask, can we check in? Can we just take the temperature? Who wants to go forward? Who wants to, and then how, right? Like, is there a way that we can bring a little bit more levity into the meeting right now? Because it's feeling really intense to me. And the impact on me is, so that we're also naming the impact.
That's a really great phrase to remember, because it's owning how you're feeling. And I think also helping everyone realize, oh, my impact, I also have an impact on the rest of us here. I love owning impact. I think that's a really important way of phrasing it.
So I want to name, generated or inspired by where you started us. I want to name two different actually there's like three in the last 24 hours, 3 different group dynamics that I've been in, and you were in one of them with me. And that is when we were meeting, it was actually 2 days ago, but with Melissa and Emily, and we had Josh from Muskoma Bank come in and work with us on Agile for 4 hours on what does it mean to become a more agile team. It was phenomenal. It was totally sidebar, awesome. Off the hook, great.
Oh my gosh.
So much information we have for you in shared leadership and agile going forward from this conversation. But there was a point in the meeting when Melissa brought up the fact that Jodi and I can talk big sky in a lot of the meetings, that we can be in very big sky dreaming, very big sky visioning, and stay there. And that Melissa is kind of politely listening while thinking, where are the tactics? Let's get to the tactics. Where are the goals? Like what done. Like, what does this mean? What is this conversation like? To what end?
Right.
And that she hadn't been speaking. She hadn't been speaking that. And that this is a habit that we've kind of gotten into together. And it's become a bit of a blind spot. And Melissa, and it turns out Emily, who supports us in our social media, another new team member, also feels it has this experience. And Melissa was brave to named it with, I thought, and I know, I can safely speak for both of us here, great dignity.
I think so.
And just no charge, no drama, but named it.
Yep.
And named it in a way where I kind of went, whoa, like, and so instead of saying to her, like, and why haven't you brought this up before? So starting with gratitude is another way, because she'd been in overwhelm. in meetings with us, and instead of first and foremost saying, why haven't you brought this up before, giving myself a pause, taking a pause, and just remembering to start with saying thank you, so that she feels brave enough to speak again. Truth to power.
Yeah.
Going forward. And so this moment of saying, thank you so much. This is what an insight.
Yeah.
This is so huge. And what do we do? So we've come up with a signal. We've come up with team signals where Melissa and Emily are going to raise their hands and give us a certain circle that we're circling. And so that, we can work with this, but I want to name that when we receive feedback, or when we feel like someone in the meeting is being brave or trying to intervene or disrupt a habit, or bring a truth in some way, can we remember to start with gratitude and say thank you, and in that way create a safe environment or a welcoming environment to be in risky business together, right?
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to name about either that whole dynamic before I take us into these other two stories, if we have the time?
Just gratitude for the container that we were in that allowed for it, because it was a moment where we were looking at the health of our working together. So we were taking this really beautiful reflective time to go over a bunch of different areas that we were how are we feeling about our function,
monitoring where we're healthy, where we're in green zone, yellow zone, or red zone,
right,
to the health of our organization.
Totally. So it was such a worthwhile moment to really go into that, so that now going forward, we're going to have these new practices in place. But it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have taken the moment to go, so how are we doing? How are we really doing?
That genuine check-in. And then I was with a team. I wasn't with a team yesterday. I was at an organization, and I support 6 different people of all different roles and responsibilities throughout this organization. And when I go over their B Corps, Blue Ribbon Company in Vermont, great reputation, and walked in the door there, and the level of stress and overwhelm that each person was in was breathtaking. And 3 out of the 6 were being deeply impacted by our politics, and the most recent act with Kavanaugh, being sworn in. And again, no matter where we sit in the issue, because we want to make sure, like, our Republican friends feel honored by being able to say the Republicans, and that this may be something they wanted, and so whomever, right, whatever our politics are, the level of anger and overwhelm and outrage concern me. Because quite honestly, I was in my own moment of, how do I honor the anger and bear witness while I'm also supporting an organization on working more powerfully in shared leadership, and doing that by supporting individuals and in being in their agency and authority and voice. And so not wanting to disrespect or dishonor their genuine, outrage. So not wanting to negate their feelings, but also really being taken by how much we continue to point the finger out. And I want to underscore that the biggest act of shared leadership that I feel this work is in service to is remembering that we have to start with ourselves. That the changes are not out there. The changes are within each one of us. And how do we learn to channel, to not stuff away or deny the fire of our anger and overwhelm and upset and pain? But how does it get channeled into wisdom? And how do we remember to be healing agents in this moment? Like, what does it mean to navigate our own feelings and be present with those around us through our diversity, and stay steady in compassion and empathy and curiosity and kindness and discomfort, the willingness to be uncomfortable and to be vulnerable? And so I did listen. I listened. And there came a point when there was enough repeat and a different kind of circling, where I'd gotten the feedback on my own circling the day before, where I did start to intervene. And I said, like, I know how much it means, and that you know that the change starts with each one of us. And what is the behavioral change that you feel you can take on to be a source of nourishment and wisdom and connection in how you want to show up with people of diversity, but also where your boundary lines on for saying no more or no less or whatever, whatever the dynamic is. But I want to name this. And again, if you're watching this now, or if you watch it later and you have any comments or any questions, or what are the ways that you source yourself when you're in anger and overwhelm? And what are the ways that you nourish yourself or bring yourself into a different kind of harmony and balance? And how do you become the change, not only for yourself, but for your teammates, your family mates, your community mates, and the groups that you're a part of? So that's my genuine inquiry that I'm in right now, that along with a couple of things that I offered, for supporting us, encouraging people, re-inspiring people, grounding people, asking them to remember that the change starts with each of us. What are you doing? So Jay, I want to turn to you and ask you, what do you do in these times?
I get outside. I need to get outside, and it's become a little bit more of a challenge, given I like to go in the mornings, so it's gotten darker, and I've noticed that I've been doing it less, and so I'm really working on, okay, so I've got to adjust my schedule. I got to maybe at the end of my day or in the middle of the day to have more moments outside. But the moment I get myself outside and I start to walk out there and breathe and feel the trees and look at the sky, whatever was overwhelming me before becomes so much less. I can feel my body relax. I can feel any of the tension or the stuff or the clutter just start to go into its place, so that I can see it, as opposed to being right in my face. Because there's just something about the way that nature can hold all of it and hold us with such abundance and grace, that being inside, I think the energy of the thing, the stuff, just starts to, it gets a little suffocating. So just getting out and being with nature, being with our mother, really, is the best thing that I have as available to me to really come back to myself.
Thank you for that. I too, at this time, along with thank you with getting outside or gazing out my window a little bit more, taking pauses in my day to just look outside. If for some reason I can't get outside, which was actually my experience yesterday in another office building, that I was in. Going to bed a little earlier, being still, making sure I'm eating really well while I'm riled up.
Yeah.
Like, how can I ground myself? Somebody recently, along with putting our hands under warm water, not too hot, not too cold, to ground when we feel the need to ground, if we have a lot of fire moving through us. Also, feeling our feet on the ground and rubbing our hands together like this is supposed to be a very grounding act. And one of the acts that I offered somebody that I was coaching yesterday, and I believe it's a Native American story, but I'm not completely positive of the wisdom tradition that the story comes from. If my memory serves me, it's a Native American story, but it's a story about the grandfather and the grandson, and that the grandson is, all riled up, and he just experiences his grandfather with walking with peace, and no matter what the challenges are that come to his grandfather, that he notices a groundedness and an expansiveness that is steady in his grandfather. And he asks his grandfather about this, about how does he do this, and the grandfather talks about the dark wolf and the white wolf that resides in each of us, and which wolf we're feeding is who we become, and what gets expressed, and that when we are feeding the shadow or the fears or the anger, and just fueling it only, that's who we become, and that's what gets expressed, and that's where our imagination goes. That's all we can see. And that when we are feeding the lightness in us and the light of us, that is what gets more expressed. And my offer to people is, again, not necessarily to cut off or negate our what we call our darkness, the anger, which can bring great wisdom and be a great fuel. So again, but I do say, if you're giving that, if we go with this line of the story, if you're giving the dark wolf 49%, or if you're giving it a lot, make sure you're only giving it 49% and give the light wolf 51%. So that, again, it's a way of being self-aware and self-monitoring our dialogue through the day and our language through the day. And I know that you may have something here to say about what words we use in just a moment.
Yes, I do.
And
two other things too.
And so then I'll stop here, but by saying, like, to discern enough to listen to ourselves, to not get so lost in our stories, right? To be able to discern and hear ourselves, so we're not using each other as posts to bring our righteousness to or our outrage to, right? But that we're really connecting, and we're connecting in ourselves, which is how we stay self-aware, and that we make sure we contain ourselves enough, and then also find the things to be optimistic about, the ways to be in creative solution, the ways to own ourselves as a part of the change, and have that be the higher percentage of where we're spending our attention, our focus, and placing our words and our actions.
Totally. So a couple of things. So in terms of words and actions, how you tell the story of what's going on for you is really important. Like, what words you choose, and why you're choosing them. What happens when you use that particular word? So if you're trying to convey something that is frustrating to you, rather than saying, or maybe you say, "Wow, I'm having such a sucky day." Like, okay, maybe you needed to say that. But if you keep perpetuating, like, "Yeah, that day was so sucky," and using that word over and over again, what is that conveying? What impact is that having, both on you as well as, like, everybody else who's hearing you, as opposed to going, Yeah, I was really frustrated before, and that was a really challenging moment, and I needed to be in a space of like, yeah, it really sucked, and then I let it go. And when I tell the story of it later, like, hey, how was your day? Like, well, I had a really challenging day. I had a moment where
it felt super sucky.
It felt super sucky, but it was a challenging day, and I'm working through it. One of the things that I've been finding that's been really helpful in terms of being noticing my own words is choosing a word that is not necessarily a triggering word, but it's helping me to be more mindful in the practice of noticing my words. So the word that I am challenging myself to question is interesting. So if I'm tempted to say something is interesting, I want to question whether or not I really mean it is of interest, or if I really mean I'm curious about something, or I'm excited by it. Like there's something actually more specific that can give me a much deeper connection to the person I'm speaking to, rather than just saying something for the sake of saying it and validating them, because it's a way of just going, oh, that's interesting.
So and so is it are you doing this? This is such a great practice. And are you doing this? Is there a both and? Is that what I'm hearing from you, that you're doing this when you do feel a genuine connection and you with that person, and you're wanting to get more specific with them, so that you're connected in that way? And then did I also hear that you're catching that this is a word that you've maybe overused?
That I've overused.
So the habit for you, it's become a habit.
Yeah.
I know. Cool. Is that for me? I say cool. You know, that's really.
I was just gonna say. So to just take notice. So again, and it's not even like a shame or blame, like, oh my gosh, I'm about to use the word, like not to create more stress in it, but to really notice
our language,
how frequently we use certain words, and what are they for? What corn are they growing? And then two other practices I want to share that have been really nourishing me and been really helpful in this moment of overwhelm. I am taking a partial Facebook sabbatical, which is a big deal for me. Really big deal. I have been an avid Facebook user participant for a very long time. And I have a lot of work places in Facebook, a lot of pages I maintain, things that I am sharing that are related to work. But I was finding that the amount of information overload with keeping track of everyone else, even if I wasn't seeing lots of inflammatory stuff or participating in a big, deep conversation, just the amount of information was overwhelming. And I wasn't able to stay more present to myself. And so I've noticed how much more spaciousness I feel, how much calmer I feel. I've been a little bit more disconnected from some of current events, but then I ask, like this morning, I asked and was hearing more from you about the latest on the Kavanaugh stuff. It's not that I haven't been totally in the loop. I've had bits and pieces, but to get more information, it sparks more of a conversation rather than just scrolling through and being barraged really by the information there. So that's been really helpful.
So thank you as always for being in a dancing dialogue for shared leadership and with our beloved community. And again, remembering, please start with yourself. Whenever we think it's really out there, see if you can take a moment to look and see what our own energy is, what your own behavior is. How do we become the change? How do we really become the change? So that we're not just the opposite side of the coin, the same coin, even though we think we're acting it's for a good reason, a better reason, than others. And remember that the shared leadership is to the end of everyone coming to the table. So cultivating our bravery, our authority, our voice, and to be true to ourselves while being true together. And in this way of becoming more humanistic and cultivating relationship, it's about building compassion and empathy and love and kindness and humor and all the healthy doses of what it means to be humane. to ourselves and to each other and to this precious earth. So thank you, each of you, for your own care and for showing up with us, and to be continued.
Definitely.
Bye for now. Bye for now.
Bye.